Thank you, Karen, for these powerful opening remarks. We'll begin our morning with a fireside chat, exploring how measuring well-being can shape decisions and across business, education, and society. Who better to have that conversation with than Jim Clifton, Gallup's executive chairman, whose lifelong work focused on helping people be heard and understanding what truly drives thriving lives and communities. Leading the discussion is Jeremie Brecheisen, who is our Gallup's managing partner for the EMEA. And so please join me in welcoming Jim Clifton to the stage.
We're so glad to have you here. We hope you feel warm and welcome. How many of you have ever interviewed your own chairman before? If it goes really well, it's his fault. If it goes really bad, never mind. All right, it's going to go wrong. Jim, Gallup, as you know, of course, has invested a lot in measuring well-being globally. We measure it in over 140 countries, sometimes as much as 160 countries, almost every country in the world. And we've been doing it for over a decade now, and we've studied it from a lot of different angles. We also measure a lot of other things, and you pay attention to a lot of things in the world. In fact, if someone asks us a question and we don't know the answer, it's kind of shame on us, right? But out of all of that, what's shocked you the most?
By the way, we don't talk before and plan questions, so I don't know. I don't always know what's. I don't know. I don't know. Well, I think one thing that shocks me, Jeremie, was telling Karen I'm so inspired this morning. Even with jet lag, I'm getting adrenaline rushes. You guys know Austin Goolsbee, the president of the Chicago Fed, highly respected economist. He was Obama's, but both sides of the aisle really like him and all that kind of stuff. But he said we don't have the right measures to run the world, and he's a really good behavioral economist, good friend, Kahneman, and he's one of those types that have moved from real hard economy to also include the other things. But I'm shocked. We've actually been doing this for 25 years. It's for a firm our size, we've got about $250 million in trying to establish this new institution of data, which I don't know what a big number is anymore, but I'm surprised with how well we do with meticulously managing GDP, average income, how many times all of us have gone to the dentist, how many speeding tickets, but the entire institution of what man and woman bought and purchased is unbelievable. We just record everything you can imagine. But if a Martian landed, I think that what he or she would want right away is say, tell me about you. What we're really good at is we'll tell you what we bought or what we made and sold. He said, okay. And he said, now I want to move to the next thing. Tell me how they're feeling. After all these centuries, we'd say, we don't do that. And so, but I'm always anxious to do this stuff, Karen, because I think what y'all are working on is really important. But I want to try to answer a very hard question is, give me something real specific, Jim, on give me an example on why we need it.
All right, let me ask that.
Okay.
Jim, give me an example on why we really need it.
Well, that's a great question, Jeremie. But I've been calling it the emotional economy just because it works for me. But if you said, how are the men and women feeling? How many people are flourishing? I like thriving. We did this. By the way, I argued with Kahneman for about 3 hours. His IQ is probably 30 points higher than mine, which is, we weren't yelling or anything, but I didn't like his question. And it's on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being the worst life imaginable and 10 being the best life imaginable. Where are you on that scale today, and where will you be on it? I didn't want that. I don't like 0 to 10 and a whole bunch of stuff. My top researcher took me out of the boardroom into the conference room in Washington and said to me, Danny has badly beaten you in this argument. I thought that'd be funnier than it was. But anyway, so we use that item, and but that's what we've been tracking you guys meticulously for 25 years. But you see, we know, world GDP is about 110 trillion. everybody, there's a whole bunch of numbers like that. All you people and economists know. But if you said, how many people are flourishing or how many people, we don't know that one. By the way, the answer is about 30%, maybe 27. But then there's enormous variation with that. Another one that I'm really interested in is how ambitious are the people? We've worried a lot about social things and all that. Nobody says, but whose workforce really has ambition? How many people are coming to work really trying to create a customer, trying to do great work? We don't know. Can you imagine that? With all the metrics we have, we don't measure that. We don't measure that one either. Our unemployment numbers are really crude. I'm going to say this because I'm a nice man. ILO's numbers are so misleading, it's shocking to me. They say that unemployment in the world is 5%. Anybody been to Mexico City, Sao Paulo, or all over it? Does that look like 5%? I mean, you don't even need to mess with it. Does that look like 5% to anybody? You know what it is? It's we've never really looked into the lives of people, and they count informal jobs. You guys know what informal jobs are? It's hawking stuff in traffic. There's no government protection, obviously, of the jobs or anything. They don't even count. They're hardly even humans. And we count that a job. And we count that as a job. I'll get this over with, but I like to get it off my chest. When I see them, they don't look like people in a job. They look more like beggars to me. Is that ILO? Is that really a job? Put a number in your head. There's 8 billion people in the world, 5.5 billion adults. And of the 5.5 billion adults, 3.5 billion of them tell Gallup they really would like to have a good job. Something that makes them feel good, something where they have a living wage. So if it's 5% unemployment, let's just say there's about 3.5 billion jobs in the world. Put a number in your head on how many of them are informal. Of the 3.5 billion, how many of them do you think are informal? The answer is 2 billion. And that's reported by ILO and OECD. You guys, what are we doing? We're not even trying very hard to get the emotional economy right. It means that real unemployment in the world is about 50%. More. It's more. It's closer to 60%. But shouldn't that be a headline? Financial Times and Wall Street. I mean, shouldn't that be everywhere? Somebody needs to go to work on that. But we're so good at one and so bad at the other, it causes world leaders to make really serious mistakes. And I want to be careful. I think they're well-meaning. Say, well, would you ask me this question? Jim, can you give me an example?
Jim, I got a really important question. I need an example.
What is it, Jeremie?
I could use an example, sir.
Put this down. The herb, I'm going to use the Arab Spring, Jeremie. So, in the three main, Tunisia, Egypt, and Bahrain. If you look at the classic economics, I think you guys know this, but it's near perfectly linear with GDP per capita or average income, just like that. But then you say, hey, you guys, how are your lives going? And that's like this. But the United Nations, let's see, it doesn't matter. United Nations or OEC gave Tunisia an award for the best managed culture and all that kind of stuff. It was failing. But so not only are they given the wrong award, they're showing a country that's not doing anything right, but we're giving them the person of the month, person of the year award for that. Well, of course that all crashed. But this is the point I wanted to make. We need a whole new institution of economics. They're emotional economics for this reason. They happened before the classic economics. And almost nobody knows that. Classic economics are a trailing indicator of the effing one we don't have. I was down with in Colombia, Gallup. We have offices around the world and stuff. And they're a really good guy, I really like him. Ivan Duque is the president. And I told him, I said, this country's, you're crashing. because GDP, it's going just like this. You get that real nice linear, everything grows about GDP grows about 1%, you divide it, you don't get much change and all that. How your lives are going are like this. I'm not talking politically, we don't hear it, Gallup. I think it'd be better if the president of the country wasn't a drug cartel leader. Just call me crazy, and of course that's what Colombia has now. You guys, I showed Duque that those numbers. We're back in the cars with the ambassador, and I could tell him he was either talking to Duque or he was talking to his girlfriend, because he was talking to oh yeah, he's right here, yeah, okay, so okay, yeah, bye, like. But Duque was calling and saying, tell him your friend Clifton's crazy. People always ask me about Trump, and I always say, are you sure Trump's that interesting? He is. But isn't it more interesting that 60 million people, 60 said, that's exactly what I want? That's way more interesting. But you see, we don't have those emotional economics. I think if we added three, one is we ought to have thriving right next to GDP, or flourishing. I mean, I call them actually the same thing. As soon as that's right next to GDP, we'll manage the whole world better. Everything's about whether or not you have a job. I've said this many times. I've had the same job for 50 years. If you said, what's the great American dream? It's this simple. It's to have a good job with a fair wage, period. Well, I thought people wanted a family and kids. No. You can't have any of those without a good job and a fair wage. You want those, but in that foundation, or the kind of the new Maslow hierarchy, it all starts right there. But I think I'm just gonna stop. But another one is Brexit. Cameron threw that vote out because he was sure that it would. You see what I mean? But if he had that emotion, like England was on its rear end during that time, and he was at way more risk. I mean, I'm not saying whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't think we'll know for 20 to 50 years. But he certainly was surprised. And that's because classic, traditional economics are trailing indicators, and the leading indicators are really available. And we need a lot more of those. So,
Jim, you mentioned the thriving, and you mentioned real unemployment, or real jobs, how many real jobs there actually are in the world. The third one you kind of mentioned earlier was this topic of ambition. And, we measure this around the world in a number of ways. And in England, in the UK, ambition was around 20% of the population here in 2009 was what we would classify as very ambitious.
mm-hmm.
Today, it's around 10%. So it's not necessarily going in the right direction for every country in every part of the world. In fact, Europe is the least ambitious region of the world, according to how we measure that. Who can save us? Who can help this? Is it universities? Is it companies? What's the answer?
Well, it's a great emotional economic. It's one of the things the United States is still, we got so many problems. I mean, you can hardly give a talk in the United States about the Gallup poll because the numbers are so depressing. But for some reason, our workplace ambition stays highest in the world. I don't know about Sweden and Finland and those. I don't know where they are, but for big countries. So I had, one of the things I noticed, when we started going to China, all CEOs would come back and say, oh my God, what's going on over there? Everybody predicted that China would overwhelm the United States. I mean, every single economist predicted that China would overwhelm the United States with GDP. One guy, Fogel, a Nobel Prize winning economist, I think his name is Fogel. I'm sure he means well. He said China would have $127 trillion in 2030, because that's only 4.5 or years away. And that I couldn't believe it as an American. You kind of sit there and say, well, they're going to have double the GDP. Is that good for the world? I don't know. Is that good for Europe? But because that definitely means they're the new leader of the free world. Here we are, 25 years later, one generation. There's $110 trillion of global all the stuff we make and sell each other is $110 trillion. Americans are only 4% of the population, and we're almost 30% of all of that. Isn't that amazing? China's at 18, and the entire EU's at 18. America, apparently the workers didn't listen, and they outperformed the whole world. And again, I don't know why that's not on the front page or somebody's trying to figure it out. But I think, Jeremie, the ambition, sometimes it's sort of a proxy for employee engagement if you have the right questions there. But one of the most dangerous things in the world is to have a national workforce that has no ambition. So if his workforce goes and let's say mine goes, and they're just trying to get through the day, they're complaining, they want more laws and suing the place and all that kind of stuff, everything starts falling apart. That's where I think those are the green sprouts of everything that goes wrong. But if he actually has employees that come in and are trying to do a good job, you always hear about innovation and entrepreneurship. You know where you want to land that? Right at the retail counter. Just have all people trying to work as hard as they can to win another customer. You don't have to build Apple. You don't have to build Meta or whatever it is. But when you have a whole country feeling pretty good about going in, a whole nation, it changes your GDP. And when you change your GDP per capita, it means that you have more jobs with a living wage. And boy, when I say that what everybody wants is a good job, remember, it's got to be a fair wage. Money's really important. A whole bunch of us started our lives where you don't have any money. And what you do is you get up in the morning, you try to figure out how to get money. And you got to have a good job to do that. And then you can start putting all the other pieces that go together with flourishing, having a mission and having purpose and all of that kind of thing. But
in America, universities are kind of down, but they're supposed to be part of the solution to this, right?
I think I don't mean to talk too much about the United States. I know that, but I know that too well. But the 5 big states of Europe are everything's about the same. But our universities are kind of crashing right now. Over the years in my job, if anything dropped 10 points, if you just want a crude rule of thumb, whether I'm doing customer market research or just any time something falls by 10 points, you need to lean in on it. Trust in universities in the United States has crashed by 30 points. They have a crisis on their hands. And I don't want to get into all that with AI. You got to wonder, when you got the smartest people in the world on any subject in your pocket, are you sure you need a college education? But so we've asked, why do you feel this way about universities? And again, we don't have that here, which is great. But they think they're teaching politics. And nobody wanted to send their kids there to teach politics and all of that kind of thing. But if you look back at startups, which is, America needs about 500,000 real startups, not single person where they're just getting a business license so they can have a gig job, but real startups. It's amazing. Almost all of them somehow came out of universities. Dr. Gallup, our founder, I'm a steward of his mission, which is a great privilege of mine. That was University of Iowa. He invented public opinion polling. There wasn't sampling and all that kind of thing. We've got a really big business called Clifton Strengths. It's a different Clifton. He was an academic and a really popular professor at the University of Nebraska. That came out of there. The internet, Vint Cerf and a guy named Bob Cohen were the first ones to get packets to fly across fiber optic, and everybody said that was UCLA. The 2 universities that have the most unicorns are Stanford and Berkeley. My God, they're just factories of them. But the university system, the United States needs to get them fixed. But I think it's going to be, they're in an existential, I think universities are in an existential crisis right now. And I think if you said, how can, we have 130 million full-time jobs in America, and those people punch so far above their weight class in the world, it's unbelievable. And if you said, how did that happen? I would say our university system.
Jim, we're about out of time. You've answered all the questions you wanted to answer, not necessarily the ones I asked. Is there any question you'd like to ask yourself at the very end here?
I actually just needed to get a lot of stuff off my chest.
It's good.
I don't know what
Next time we'll bring a couch.
I don't know what you guys charge per hour for therapy, but
I think it's really just what's that last thought for you as you think about, you've mentioned unicorns, you've mentioned how we create jobs in the future, real jobs, fair wages. You've talked about universities. Any last thoughts, advice on what we do about it?
So the whole world's thriving is at 30% this morning. That's how many people. Could you get that to 50? I mean, of all the things that humans have pulled off, wouldn't there be a way to get that to 50%? I mean, that'd be you said from all you've learned from the world poll and everything, what would do that? We need more full-time jobs with a living wage. We can't have 50% real unemployment. But in 2 weeks, Google Gallup, and there's a really cool little report on there, but it's amazing how full-time jobs perfectly follows thriving. So if you said, well, I want to fix Colombia right now because it's crashed, the only way you can fix it fast is to get more full-time jobs. If you want to do a little algorithm, a little stepwise thing here. How do you get those? You have to have startups. Startups with one person more than the proprietor. If you want to do a little prediction model, and then the world needs millions of those. But if you said exactly how do you fix the whole world for having, thriving, I would say that. Here's what's going to happen. So the 110, IMF and World Bank say we're going to grow at 3% if you do the math on that, that means we'll be at 240 trillion in 25 years. So the question is that enough money to fix the world, and who gets it? Can you see if all that rains in on China, China will be the new leader of the free world and all that. But what I'm really interested in right now, Jeremie and Karen, are trying to figure out where that $100 trillion is going to come. You guys follow the unicorns. The unicorns, there's 1,200 active unicorns in the world right now. You say, well, will they have all the 100 trillion? No, but those are the best omens for whatever else is around them. And right now in the world, they're packed into San Francisco, not Los Angeles, not Austin, Texas, and all that kind of thing. But then what you can predict is there'll be thousands, tens of thousands of green sprouts all around those. But then nations that don't have those unicorns, those predictors, then they're not going to get their shares. But right now, of the 1,200, 700 of them are U.S. 700 unicorns out of 1,200. China has kind of 250. England has sort of 60-ish. Germany's clear down around 30. If this was 20 years ago, Germany's grinding down. India's doing pretty well. India's about 80. But Saudi Arabia, they throw money at it and all of that. They won. It shows you that entrepreneurship and innovation, a lot of that's something money can't buy. It's got to be leadership, and you got to know what you're going for and all that kind of thing. But I'm starting to ramble a little bit. But Karen, thank you for all you do. And you guys, thanks for having an interest in WASU and Gallup and all that. I know some of you, and I'm looking forward to talking to you coffee time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I would just say before you clap, these rooms are can be split in two. So there's two names here. This side is called the significance room, and this side is called the futuristic room. Why are they called that? Well, they're named after two of the Clifton strengths of the 34. Significance was Don Clifton's top strength, and he made a massive contribution in helping the world discover their strengths. Futuristic is Jim Clifton's top strength. He is constantly thinking about where we're going, and we're really appreciative for you to be here and help us think that through. Thank you, Jim.
Good.